Welcome to Hope One Live, ladies and gentlemen. What can you do when your boss wants you to celebrate things that you know God doesn't want you to celebrate? What can you do when wokeness comes to your company and you feel compelled to do something that you ought not do, that in your heart you know you ought not do? That's what we're going to talk about today before we get to your questions. But we are also going to get to your questions live via Skype. And the great Jorge Gill will come on now and tell you how you can do that. Jorge, how can they join us live via Skype on this live stream tonight?
Pretty easy, Frank. All they have to do is go to crossexamine.org/SQ, stands for Skype questions. And as you're going to see in a minute right on the screen, this is the landing page where they're going to land. All you have to do is fill out this form. It's super simple. Put your real name right here on the slot that says name, and then your Skype name, which is actually your Skype ID. What I need you to do is, if you don't know your Skype ID, is usually a set of numbers. They go something like live, colon, your name, or alphanumeric serial number or something like that. But if you don't have that, just put the email that you use to sign or the login to your Skype account. All right. A lot of people say, why you're not using Zoom for the duties? Skype has got this thing called NDI technology that allows me to bring you into the shot. So that's why we use Skype. All you have to do is follow the rules that are really simple. All you have to do is hover over each spot and you get an explanation. Then you select the choice, whether you're a Christian, an atheist, an agnostic, or a Muslim or a Buddhist. We do want to dialogue with you. And then you put a summary of your question. Now, make sure you understand that this is not your question. This is not how we answer your questions via text. If you want to do that, make sure that you use your comment section either on Facebook or on YouTube, and our team will pick them up. Okay, but this is for us to know what kind of question you're asking, and then our team will will send these questions to me, and I will be able to bring you on the screen. Now, I do need you to do something for me. The first thing you need to do is make sure that you are in a place that is well lit. When you come in Skype, if you're using a phone, make sure that the phone is like that on a horizontal mode. Make sure that you have a phone sitting on something. Don't have the phone wiggling everywhere. And if you have headphones, that's a plus. Don't be listening to the live stream while we call you, and wait until we call you, and be on the lookout for a notification from Skype when I reach out to you. If I send you a notification, if I send you a message and within the first minute you don't answer, I'll move on to the next person, and we move on, because this is sort of complicated to bring people in, and I have to make sure that I get it going fast. So that is it for the instructions. Frank, I don't know if you have anything else to say. If not, back to you.
Well, the only other thing we want them to do is have the light in front of them, not behind them, because then we can't see you. See, I've got a light right here to my right. So make sure you do that. And you can also ask questions in the chat. We'll try and get to some of the questions in the chat, and we'll give priority to who, Jorge?
We're going to give priority to those who send stars on Facebook and super chats on YouTube. Okay.
All right. Very good. All right. We're going to get to your questions here in about 15 or 20 minutes, but I want to talk about questions that you can ask your woke boss. I've been in several Q&As recently with small groups at churches, and questions come up about this because people are struggling at their jobs because their employers have gone completely left, completely woke, and some Christians, and even sometimes not even Christians, they're just conservatives who are going, what do? I can't support what's going on here. I feel like I have to hide under my desk, and I can't let my true beliefs known. I can't let them known to anyone, or I might get fired. Well, some of you probably already know this. I've talked about this before, but 10 years ago, I was fired by Bank of America and Cisco because I had written a book called Correct, Not Politically Correct, How Same-Sex Marriage Hurts Everyone. This is never a book I brought up at work. I was a vendor. I was doing leadership training for these companies. But when they discovered I had written the book, they fired me immediately. And I'll tell you what happened as I go through some of the questions I think you can ask people when this comes up. Now, I'm not promising that these questions are a cure-all or that somehow the HR department or your boss is going to go, I really agree with you on this. This is a risk. You might lose your job, as did I. And it doesn't cost me anything to tell you this, but it might cost you something. That if you do speak up, there may be consequences. However, we have to, as Christians, make sure that we are changing the culture and the culture is not changing us. And even if we can't change the culture, at least we can prevent the culture from changing us. We don't want to compromise who we are. We don't want to compromise our witness for Christ just because we're afraid of consequences. This is why, by the way, Rod Dreher, the author of Live Not by Lies, says we ought to be in small groups right now. Groups of people that can support you if difficulty like this comes up. If you get fired, if you get laid off, other people can come around you and financially support you until you find another job, or they can help you find another job. We need to start doing that now because this is coming. Okay, enough said about that. What can we do? What are some of the questions that you can ask in order to prevent you from violating your own conscience? I think one of the questions you can ask of the HR person or your boss is privately ask this. Can I ask some questions to get some clarification on our company's policies? Of course, they're going to have to say yes. That's what they're there for, right? Now, I would start off after I got permission to ask some questions. I would say, look, I'm not questioning anyone's intentions about the policies I'm going to ask about. I think everyone's intentions are good with these policies. I'm just concerned that there may be some unforeseen and unintended consequences with these policies. That's why I'm concerned. That's why I want to ask these questions. So I don't want anyone to take any offense. I'm just concerned there may be some unforeseen and unintended consequences. My first question is, does this company value tolerance? Does this company value tolerance? Now, what are they going to have to say? Well, of course, they value tolerance. So my next question is this: what does tolerance mean? And see what they say. If they say, well, tolerance means that we all accept one another's viewpoints, then you can say, okay, great. Because if I have a viewpoint that's different from the company's on a non-essential issue that doesn't affect my work, then you'll tolerate that then, right? Because that's what tolerance means. You can only tolerate something that you disagree with. You don't tolerate things you agree with. You agree with those things. So tolerance means, by definition, that you disagree with whatever you are tolerating. You don't tolerate things you agree with. So ask the question, what does tolerance mean? If one of their values is inclusion, the next question is, what does inclusion mean? Now, why am I bringing these up? Well, the third question would be, what does diversity mean in this little trio? What does tolerance mean? What does inclusion mean? What does diversity mean? Why am I bringing this up? Because when I had my conversation with the head of inclusion, tolerance, and diversity at Cisco, I asked these very questions. And did I get firm answers? No, I got more platitudes back. And this is why the meeting ultimately went sideways, because the head of inclusion, tolerance, and diversity couldn't understand why I was being excluded and not tolerated for holding a diverse view in the name of inclusion, tolerance, and diversity. So you need to get clarification as to what they mean. And if you have a fair-minded HR person or a fair-minded CEO or just a fair-minded boss, they might realize that they need to go back to the drawing board and really define what they mean by these words. Or they may say, you're right. You do have a right to not agree with these policies as long as you do your job well. And then if that's the case, problem is solved. So does the company value tolerance? What does tolerance mean? What does inclusion mean? And what does diversity mean? Another question. Do we all have to have the same political, religious, and moral beliefs to work here? Do we all have to have the same political, religious, and moral beliefs to work here? If they say yes, then they've just violated the civil rights legislation of 1964. And so they're probably not going to say yes. They're going to say, no, we don't have to have all the same political, religious, or moral beliefs to work here. If that's the case, you, again, have an opening to have your moral belief not being forced on you against your will, or their moral belief being forced on you against their will. Another question. Does the company think it's right to force employees to violate their conscience? Let me say that again. Does the company think it's right to force employees to violate their conscience? Now, what HR director is going to say yes? Well, hopefully none. And if they say, no, we don't think that the company has the right to force employees to, or attempt to force employees to violate their conscience, then you can say, well, this is a matter of conscience for me. I can't support such and such a policy that says I have to use certain pronouns, or I have to go to certain diversity training, because diversity training isn't really diversity training to corporate elites. Diversity training is indoctrination into LGBTQ political goals. That's what I found out 10 years ago. And that's the same that's going on now. So, again, ask the question, does the company think it's right to force employees to violate their conscience? Now, when it comes to gender dysphoria, when it comes to the use of pronouns, you know, some people will say, what's your pronoun? Or what are your pronoun preferences? I think you can say, I'm a man. I don't have pronoun preferences. I don't think you want to put he or him or whatever on your email or any of that, because that's just advancing this worldview, which is not the Christian worldview, that there are men and women. It advances this idea that you can make up your own gender. But let me say this, one other thing about this, that transgenderism presupposes fixed genders. Why? Because in order for me as a man to say I'm a woman stuck in a man's body, I have to have some idea of what a man is and some idea of what a woman is in order for me to even know that. And then secondly, in order for me to have some sort of surgery that takes me from being a man to being a woman, I would have to know what a man is and what a woman is. So transgenderism presupposes fixed genders. It presupposes the two sexes, even though on the other hand, they try and deny it. In any event, when they bring up pronouns, again, you can say, I don't have personal pronouns, I'm a man. You could also say that my personal pronoun is Your Majesty, but I don't think people are going to buy that, okay? So, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but many on the left have zero sense of humor. So if you were to say, my personal pronoun is Your Majesty, I'll call you whatever you want as long as you use my personal pronoun, Your Majesty. I don't think they'll even get a chuckle out of that, but the rest of us can laugh, right? Okay. I'm not trying to make light of you can't even apologize. You can't even apologize about humor anymore. Forget it. I'm not apologizing about humor. It's fun. Okay. In any event, I think another thing you can say here about this gender dysphoria issue is this. Why does the company think it has the medical expertise to order employees to encourage people to stay in their state of gender dysphoria? Let me say that again. Why does the company think it has the medical expertise to order employees to encourage people to stay in their state of gender dysphoria? Because that's essentially what this whole personal pronoun situation is. They're trying to force everybody to affirm other people to stay in their state of gender dysphoria. Why do they think that they have the medical expertise to do that as a company? You could also state this. Is the company aware that those with gender dysphoria have a suicide rate 19 times higher than the general public after gender reassignment surgery? Yes, those who have gender dysphoria have a suicide rate 19 times higher than the general public after they have the surgery. Does the company understand that? And how does affirming this condition help people? How does affirming this condition help people? I want to help people, and my conscience says I'm not helping them by affirming something that may lead to their deaths. So in good conscience, I cannot support this. I'm going to be a good employee. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to treat everybody with respect, but I can't lie to people. I can't affirm something that I actually think and the medical data shows is harmful to people. But that's what you want me to do. So why does the company think it has the medical expertise to do that? Now, if you have an opportunity to go a little bit further, you could also say, by the way, why are we talking about sex in the workplace to begin with? What does sex have to do with workplace productivity? As long as everybody treats one another with respect, regardless of what they want to do sexually, then why are we even bringing the subject up? Because sex in the workplace, I mean, are we supposed to have sex in the workplace? Be careful how you answer. No, we're not, okay? But why do we keep bringing this up? You might also ask, why is the company forcing people to take firm positions on controversial political and moral issues? Again, why is the company forcing people to take firm positions on controversial political and moral issues? We might even say controversial, political, moral, and medical issues, because that's what this is. This is not only an issue for medicine, it's also an issue for psychiatry, gender dysphoria. And yet we have our corporate elites telling us how we should treat people to affirm them in a condition that the data show is actually a harmful condition. And they ought to be actually gotten professional help to be brought out of that condition because it's harmful. It's a harmful condition. That is what we need to do. If we truly want to help people, we don't want to affirm them in something that is harmful. This is why Dr. Paul McHugh, a psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins University, likens gender dysphoria to anorexia. And anorexic has a psychological mismatch between their mind and their body. They think they're overweight, but they're really not. Someone who has gender dysphoria has a psychological mismatch between their biology and their psychology. They think that they're really a woman if they're actually a man, or vice versa, even though that's not the case. Now, if you want to help somebody who has anorexia, would you affirm them in anorexia? Or would you say, I think we have to give you some nutrition? You wouldn't say to the anorexic, let me give you liposuction. Yes, you're overweight. Let me give you liposuction. But that's what we're doing with gender dysphoria. We are actually telling people, we are affirming their gender dysphoria rather than getting them help to deal with the issue. And we have companies now, corporate elites, telling us this is what needs to happen. And you might also add this. I treat everyone with respect, regardless of any political or moral disagreements we may have. I don't want to try to force people to act in ways contrary to their conscience, and I only ask the same respect in return. I won't try and force you or other people in this company to act in ways contrary to your conscience or their conscience, and I only ask the same respect in return that you will not try and force me to violate my conscience. We have conscientious objector status in our country, and we should have it in our companies as well. You shouldn't try and force people to violate their conscience, especially on something that really has zero to do with workplace productivity. Now, that is if you're having a conversation with your woke boss. And notice I was using questions about the company. You don't want to attack your woke boss or your woke HR professional. You want to put all this off on the company because these are now company policies. So that's why I asked the questions by saying, can I ask you about company policy? Or does the company think? Or why does the company think? Not why do you think? You don't want to put them on the defensive like that. You can say, why does the company think? Has the company thought this through? Because there may be unintended consequences. And that's what I'm concerned about. There's unintended consequences on conscience. There's unintended consequences on medical results that could hurt people. For example, the 19 times suicide rate that people who struggle with gender dysphoria have. And it seems like we're ignoring all that with these policies. Again, I'm not questioning anyone's intentions. I assume everyone's intentions are good on all sides of this issue. I'm just looking at the data, and I'm concerned that the data is going to lead people down a very negative road. And I don't want to be a part of that. I can't be a part of that. And yet, I want to continue to work here, and I will continue to treat everyone with respect. Now, when you are speaking to an individual and you're not speaking to somebody who's part of the company, or if they're not representing the company, then these questions you can alter a little bit. Why do you think? Why do you think that affirming someone in this particular condition is a good thing? How are we helping them if we're affirming them in this condition? You can also ask the questions that Greg Kokel has in his book, Tactics. If you're asked something, a question about a very controversial issue, you can say, do you consider yourself a tolerant person? This goes back to the question I asked about the company. Does the company value tolerance? Okay, what does tolerance mean? When you ask, do you consider yourself a tolerant person? The other person's going to have to say, well, of course. And then you can say, great, because if I offer an opinion that is different from yours, then you will tolerate it then. That's what tolerance is, right? And when they say something, again, you say, what do you mean by that? And how'd you come to that conclusion? If they call you a name, you're a bigot. What do you mean by bigotry? As soon as they try and define it, they're going to be in trouble. Why? Well, for example, this happened to me once. I had a same-sex marriage advocate who called me a bigot. And I said to him, what do you mean by bigotry? And he said, fear and intolerance. And I said, no, that's not the definition of bigotry. The definition of bigotry is having a firm opinion on an issue without having studied it. Maybe a wrong opinion. And I said to him, with all due respect, if anyone's a bigot, it's not me, it's you, because you're judging me based on my position, and you don't even know why I hold this position. I've written an entire book on this topic, and you don't know why I hold that position. I could be right, and you're calling me a bigot. Or if they say, well, yeah, you're a bigot, you don't agree with me. Well, does that make you a bigot because you don't agree with me? No, that's not the definition of bigotry. Just because we don't agree. And then, of course, after you ask what do you mean by that is how did you come to that conclusion? In other words, what evidence do you have for this position? What evidence does the company have that affirming people in gender dysphoria is a good thing for the employee? What evidence does the company have that trying to get everybody to obey certain political goals or certain politically correct moral positions is a good thing? What evidence do you have for that? So how did you come to that conclusion? Now, again, all of this may get you into trouble. I admit that. But I can tell you, nothing's going to get better until people start standing up for the truth in a winsome but firm way. Again, we might not be able to change the culture very much, but we can sure prevent the culture from changing us. By the way, if you go back to Rod Dreher's book, and he deals with Soviet dissidents in that book, people who survived the Iron Curtain. He talks about people who wouldn't back down, and despite the fact that they were punished for it, they had much more joy than those who did violate their own consciences. The people who did violate their own consciences couldn't live with themselves after they did that. But the people that stood firm, despite the fact that they were punished for it, had a joy and a peace that surpasses all understanding. Nietzsche said, the great atheist, a man's spirit is determined by how much truth he can tolerate. How much truth he can tolerate. Now, Nietzsche was right about that, despite being an atheist. Some people can't tolerate truth, and that's why they'll shout you down, and that's why they're going to come back at you and attack you. But Jesus said that if they persecuted me, they're going to persecute you. But take heart, I've overcome the world. So stand firm with Jesus. All right, let's go to some questions. We can talk more about this, but we want to get some people live on camera. If you have any questions about this topic or any other topics we can talk about again, Jorge, do we want to got somebody to bring on or what?
Yeah, but I want to talk to our audience first. We're getting this issue over and over and over again, and that is the fact that we have about 10 people that have submitted their questions through the Skype form, and they all got the Skype ID wrong. They either misspelled it or they're not using the email that I asked them to put over there. So there's nothing we can do with those questions until my omniscience kick in. Then I won't be able to know what's your Skype ID unless you put it there properly. Now, we do have a couple of them, and we have great questions that are coming through the chat. So, Frank, I'll leave you with a couple of those until I bring our first guest. Now, we have 3 people only on the Skype questions because those are the ones to put their Skype ID correctly. Okay, so I'm going to give them a couple more minutes until I get our first guest. You go ahead on and get those questions in from the chat, and I'll see you in just a few minutes. We do have a super chat here, and I think it's more like I think it's a rhetorical question. Just, can somebody tell me when it was that a person's constitutional rights became irrelevant when they entered work? And I think
they don't, except, and there's one exception to that, or maybe a couple of exceptions. If you're in the United States military or working for the government in some sort of secret capacity, then you do give up, say, the right to free speech on certain issues or the right to make political statements. Other than that, no. Coca-Cola, Google, anyone in big tech, any company you work for, Bank of America, Wells, whoever you work for, has no right to take away your right to free speech. Okay? But on the other hand, you don't have a right to work there either. So if they can find a reason to fire you, a legitimate reason, they can. But if they're firing you for your religious beliefs or your deeply held moral beliefs, you might have a lawsuit. Now, I didn't have a lawsuit because I was not an employee. I was a vendor. They could have fired me for wearing the wrong colored shirt, okay? Or just because they didn't like me for whatever reason. I didn't have the protections that you get by being an employee. If you are fired and you think that you're fired for something that is an illegitimate firing for your religious beliefs, your moral beliefs, then you should call the Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF, because they are Christian attorneys. There's thousands of them, a couple of thousand at least. They do great work. They take cases all the way to the Supreme Court, and they will support you for free if they think you have a valid case and can take your case on. So the Alliance Defending Freedom, it's a group that we personally support, and you might want to do that as well. They do some great work. So great question. Okay, during a Zoom call, here's another super chat. Angelia says, during a Zoom call with boss and coworkers, how can I not look intolerant when they ask an opinion about LGBTQ Pride Month celebration? I'm a Christian and homosexuality is not Jesus approved, so I do not. Okay, well, again, when they ask your opinion, I think what you ought to do is you ought to say, do you consider yourself a tolerant person? And when they say yes, they have to say yes, right? If they don't say yes, then their entire case is blown out of the water anyway. That's one of their mantras. We're for tolerance, right? So when they say yes, I'm tolerant, then you can say that great, because if I offer an opinion that is different from yours, then you will tolerate it then. And you might say that it's not my opinion as to whether or not homosexual behavior is right or wrong. I'm not the moral arbiter of the universe, okay? I am agreeing with what Jesus and his apostles have said and what natural law has taught for millennia, that men were made for women and women were made for men. And I would be unloving if I didn't adhere to what I thought was the truth. So you might say something like that. I tolerate what you do, and you can tolerate what I do or not do. And we can all work together. But we don't have to agree on every moral or political issue in order to work here at this company. If we say we do, then we have a problem with federal law and the United States Constitution. Okay.
Excellent,
Question,
Frank.
Angela.
Now we got Landon here. And Landon, unmute yourself and welcome to the show, bro.
Landon, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Frank. Thank you guys so much for your ministry.
Sure. Where are you?
I'm in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Roll Tide.
That's what they say. I don't say that, but that's what everybody else says.
Yeah. Are you War Eagle? What are you?
No, sir. Originally from Starkville, Mississippi, so I'm actually a Mississippi State fan. So we're not.
Oh, Mississippi State. Well, that's where Dak Prescott went. That's where Evan Ingram went. Yeah, you got some good players there.
Yes, sir.
What's going on?
My question for you is, I was doing some reading on Dawkins and Hawking, and it's just kind of remarkable that they both, despite being militant atheists, as you mentioned, believe that it's kind of neat that the Earth seems to be fine-tuned and the universe seems to be fine-tuned, although they believe there's not a God. So it kind of got me thinking: is there a particular, I guess, argument with the fine-tuning argument that you look at and say, man, this is kind of the most neat, or maybe the coolest discovery that you've made when it comes to fine-tuning?
Yeah, great question, Landon. In fact, Christopher Hitchens, I don't know if you remember him, but he was a brilliant British atheist who sounded more brilliant than he was because he had a British accent. And I had a couple of debates with him years ago. You can see him on our YouTube channel. And Christopher admitted that the fine-tuning argument was really the best argument he thought for theism. And you know why it's such a good argument? Because it goes all the way back to the very beginning, Landon. The initial conditions of the universe are fine-tuned. It's not like the conditions evolved by chance to some particular state. It's that from the very beginning, they were fine-tuned. This is why Stephen Hawking famously said, if the expansion rate of the universe was different by 1 part in 1,000 million, a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. So Hawking is saying from the very beginning, that expansion rate was so precise that if you were to change it just imperceptibly, there would be no universe or no universe that could support life. Now, what can explain that? You know, Hawking tried to explain the creation of the universe by saying on page 181 of his book, The Grand Design, he said, because there's a law like gravity, the universe can and will create itself out of nothing. What? Because there's a law like gravity, the universe can and will create itself out of nothing. I'm sure you're familiar with John Lennox, are you, Landon? Yeah, John Lennox famously said this about that comment. John Lennox said, when brilliant scientists say nonsense, it's still nonsense. Okay, because first of all, gravity didn't exist prior to the creation of the universe. But secondly, gravity doesn't create anything. Gravity just does the same thing over and over again. In fact, the better question is, where did gravity come from? And why is it so precise? That's another one of the fine-tuned constants. In fact, there's about a dozen of these fine-tuned attributes about our universe, Landon, that say people like Luke Barnes down in Australia have identified. And this is not even controversial among the atheists. They admit it's fine-tuned. But how do they get around it? What do they say? Well, maybe there's a multiverse out there. Maybe there are trillions of these universes, and just by chance, our universe is the one that supports life, but it really isn't designed. Now, this doesn't work for a number of reasons. Number one, because there's no evidence for it. It's a complete faith position. We can't get outside this universe to see what's outside it, right? Secondly, it would require a universe generating machine of some kind, because these universes that start would still need fine-tuning to get started, so you don't get rid of the fine-tuner. And thirdly, you can't have an infinite number of finite things. I mean, there's only a finite number of marbles, of atoms, of universes, if there are any others than our own. So it doesn't work. And fourthly, I might say chance is not a cause, right? Chance is a word we use to describe mathematical possibilities. Chance doesn't cause a thing. When scientists use the word chance, what they really mean is we don't know. So the multi-universe theory just doesn't help them. And you know what it is? It's a backhanded compliment to the fine-tuning argument, because nobody would be suggesting multiple universes if this universe didn't appear so fine-tuned, which is why Dr. Paul Davies, who teaches, I think, down at Arizona or Arizona State, he's an agnostic astronomer, says that the multiverse is a dodge. It's a dodge. People are trying to get around it. In fact, it was Alexander Vilenkin, the agnostic cosmologist from Tufts University, who said that cosmologists now have a problem because they can't escape the problem of a beginning. And he actually believes in a multiverse, Landon. He believes there are other universes out there. And he says, look, even if there are other universes out there, all of them together, the whole show needs an absolute beginning. Now, he doesn't think it's God. He's agnostic. But it seems to me God would be the best explanation. If space, matter, and time had a beginning, the cause must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, thank you so much, Dr. Turek. I appreciate your time and your ministry.
Hey, thank you so much for the question. It's a great question. And yes, the fine-tuning argument is what many think to be one of the most powerful arguments for the existence of God. I think actually they're all pretty powerful. I think the cosmological argument is, the teleological and the fine-tuning, the biological argument or teleological argument from biology, and of course the moral argument as well. But thank you, Landon. Thanks for being with us. Let me pull another question off the chat here. One says, I always want to know, define tolerance. Yeah, well, tolerance is supposed to mean that you are going to respect somebody and their right to have an opinion that you don't hold. You might not agree with the opinion, quite obviously, in order to tolerate it, but you respect that person, and that person has the right to hold the opinion, even if you disagree with it. Today, what people think tolerance is you must celebrate what I do, not just agree with what I do, but celebrate what I do. Now, when the shoe is put on the other foot, unfortunately, though, that definition changes, because they don't think that they ought to tolerate Christians or conservatives or people that have a different view than them. They don't want to tolerate us. See, I've noticed that people who claim to be fighting for tolerance are often the most intolerant people out there. They want to shut down what conservatives and or Christians believe. They don't want to tolerate their beliefs. All right, that's a good question. Let's see. Catherine asks, could you weigh in on Dr. Jordan Peterson? Have you had time to tune into any of his biblical series? If so, what are your thoughts? Would you consider having him on your show? Would love to hear that conversation. Thank you for all you do. I would love to have Dr. Jordan Peterson on the show. I have not seen much of his biblical series, but I did see him recently actually weeping over the thought of Jesus on a video. Now, Dr. Peterson has gone through some difficulty in the past few years, as you know, some medical troubles. He actually went off to Russia to get some treatment, and he's back, thankfully, now. And a number of years ago, he said, when he was asked about Christianity, he said, I need about 3 years to study the resurrection. I don't know if he's been studying it, but a lot of what he says, quite obviously, I agree with. But I don't exactly know where he is spiritually at this point. His heart does appear to be open. I know he believes this, Catherine. I know he believes that even if Christianity isn't true, it's very valuable to society. I know he believes that. And by the way, even people like Richard Dawkins are starting to recognize that. Why? Because a tepid secularism can't stand up against a rabid Islam over there in the UK. And Richard Dawkins is going, man, I don't want Islam. I don't want Sharia law in the UK. Who's gonna blunt this? Only the Christians will. So he's starting to realize that he'd rather live in a Christian society than a Muslim society. But yeah, great question. I'd love to have Dr. Peterson on. So if anyone knows how to contact him, let me know. He's got those 2 books on rules for life, and he generally just speaks some wisdom. And if you notice, a lot of men are looking for guidance from someone like that, and he's just kind of popped up and given them, in most cases, in my view anyway, from what I've seen, very good guidance. So thank you for that question. All right, Jorge, who else we got?
Good deal, Frank. We got Sejin Kim, and welcome to the show. Sejin, go ahead and unmute yourself, and here you are.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hey, good. Sejin, where are you?
I'm in Seattle, Washington.
All right. They allow an internet connection to crossexamine.org from Seattle? I'm shocked.
Yeah, it's pretty strong over here. It's pretty hot over here actually too as well, but yeah, it's going well.
Really? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I just had a question on the Euthyphro Dilemma, and I understand like the answer that we can normally come up with regards to how there's another option there. Yeah. But I think the particular horn that kind of says that things are good because God says so or does, I think that horn is a little bit, I guess, hard for me to explain in terms of when I think about the laws that existed in the Old Testament, particularly the cultural ones, the Mosaic ones, that, to the Israelites were sinful, but to us, don't really apply. And I think I have a hard time figuring out how to explain that that to someone in a way that doesn't make them think of that particular horn of the dilemma.
Okay, yeah. Just so for people who are watching, the Euthyphro Dilemma says this: is it good because God does it, or does God do it because it's good, basically? Right. And this comes from a Plato dialogue, okay? And look, if you say that God does it because it's good, then what do you need God for morality for? God's looking to a standard beyond him, and he goes, oh, that's good? Okay, I'll do it. So you don't need God in that case. The other horn of the dilemma is the idea that does God just arbitrarily make things up? Is it good because God does it? So he just arbitrarily makes up that murder is bad and say love is good. So in that case, God is arbitrary, right? In either case, you don't really need God for morality. But what's forgotten, it's not a dilemma, as you know. A dilemma is A or non-A. You only have two choices. This is a false dilemma. This is A or B. So there may be a C. There may be a third option here. And there is a third option. The third option, well, first of all, God doesn't look up to a standard beyond him. If he did, then that standard would be God. And God doesn't arbitrarily make up right and wrong. God is the standard of rightness. Mm-hmm. So it's not above him. He's not arbitrary. He is the standard. The buck has to stop somewhere, and it stops with God. But this does raise the question, and if I understand your question right, basically what you're saying is, well, God's commands seem to change. So is he arbitrary? Is that sort of the objection here?
Well, yeah, it's not necessarily an objection that I have, but it's more of something that I struggle to explain.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. So I think in terms of I feel like someone would think of okay, these laws about, not eating shellfish and, whatnot, these were considered sin to the Israelites, but not to us. And so how can you not look at that kind of a distinction and not conclude that whatever God does is just morality and take that particular horn of the dilemma there.
Right. And he's not supposed to change, right? So why is he changing?
Right.
All right, I think we're about out of time. Thanks for the call. No. Come on. That was pretty good, wasn't it? Come on. All right. Now, first of all, let's take the shellfish situation here. Okay, we don't eat shellfish anymore, and we didn't. The Israelites didn't, and we do now. So what's the deal with that? What's God changing here? Well, what was the purpose of the shellfish command? It wasn't inherently that shellfish was bad, although dietary wise, we know it's not very healthy. But it was because God was separating the Israelites from the cultures around them. Okay. And the cultures around, we don't know a lot about those cultures, but maybe they were doing something with shellfish that the Israelites shouldn't have been doing. Maybe they were using it in sacrifices. Who knows? Okay. The point here is that, and I'm hearing a lot of feedback now. I don't know why. Why am I hearing that, Jorge?
Maybe he can turn it down a little bit.
Oh, is that on his end? Okay. All right. I don't know if you can turn that down a little bit. Anyway, the shellfish and the wearing certain clothing and all that was just for Israel to separate them from the surrounding cultures, to be holy, to be set apart. Circumcision was the same thing. It was a sign, right? To be set apart from the surrounding cultures. Now, the command changes, but the value behind the command does not change. In other words, the value behind the command is be holy, be set apart. The command changes because of the situation. Right? The situation has changed now. The old covenant is no longer in existence. There's no Israeli old covenant now. There's not a nation of Israel that's a theocracy anymore. So those commands have now been set aside, but the value behind the command is the same. And that is to be set apart, to be holy. And we do this as parents, don't we? When our kids are young, we say to our kids, hey, stay out of the street. Right. But when they get older, we go, get out in the street and get a job. Now, why do we change the command? Well, the value behind the command is the same. We're telling our young kids to stay out of the street because we love them. And we're telling our older kids to get out in the street because we love them. But the situation has changed. And so the command changes. When you're older, you need to get out of the street to go out and make a living and be a productive citizen. And your parents love you by forcing you, by pushing you out of the nest to go do that. So commands change all the time, but the value behind the command doesn't change.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes actually a lot of sense, and it clears it up in terms of how to explain that. So,
all right, excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, spread it around Seattle there. Maybe it'll be home.
I will do my best. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the call. Great question. All right, Jorge. You're bringing on somebody else. Let me see if I can pull another one off here.
Sounds good, man.
Let's see. What are some bits of wisdom that you can give a pastor's kid who is struggling with how the church views me? I feel like their parenthood and pastorship bleed into each other a lot. Well, I think that's going to happen with any profession, anybody, any parent in any profession, that there's going to be some crossover between what a person does professionally and how they might behave at home, because part of what you do does affect how you are at home, at least to a certain extent. And it would seem to me that you're asking the question here, if I'm right, Miguel, about how people in the church view you, not how your parents view you, if I'm reading the question right. Do they unfortunately expect you to be a perfect child? Because if that's the case, I can see how that has to be an unbearable and unattainable standard. And I think maybe you might be able to go to your dad and say, hey, Dad, when you're preaching, maybe you could throw in the fact that we're all sinners, including me on the stage, including my family and every family here. And we need to show grace to one another, and we need to bear one another's burdens. We're not condoning sin, don't get me wrong. We don't want people to stay in known sin, but none of us are living a perfect life because we all have the sin nature. So you don't want to look at my children as being perfect children, just like you ought not look at me as being a perfect pastor or a perfect man. I'm not. In fact, that's one of the problems, I think, in our culture. We put so much pressure on the people on the stage. We treat them like celebrities, which partially, I think, has led, at least created the condition for the Ravi Zacharias scandal. Everyone treated Ravi like a celebrity. And he, unfortunately, used that celebrity status to get some illicit sex, it seems. That's what the evidence shows. He used his celebrity and his power to get sex. As you know, the big three problems that any of us could be tempted by are sex, money, and power. That's why the Proverbs spend so much time on sex, money, and power. And if you treat people like they're walking on water all the time and they can do no wrong and you never question them and you think they're better than everyone else, well, you might just set them up for a fall. People need accountability, and we ought not be treating people like celebrities. In fact, our newest video on the Cross-Examined YouTube channel, or our second newest, it came out this week, has to do with this issue. So take a look at that. But yeah, you might want to bring everybody back down to earth. And maybe your dad can do that even from the pulpit, or you can do it one-on-one with people and say, look, I struggle with sin just like everybody else. I need your support just like you might need my support. So let's not put people on pedestals. By the way, everybody in a church, every Christian has some sort of spiritual gift that they can share with the body. Just because someone has a gift of teaching or preaching or whatever, and they're on the stage, doesn't mean they're any better than anyone else. They're just more visible. So do not treat them as somebody who's untouchable. You might give them honor, as you give a pastor an honor, but that doesn't mean that you give them a free pass on sin, because if you do, you're not helping them and you're not helping the congregation. All right. Good question.
Deal, Frank. Right. Now we got Justin. Justin, go ahead and unmute your mic and welcome to the show, bro.
Hey guys, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can. Justin, how are you?
Right on. Awesome. Hey Frank.
Are you in Detroit or New York? Because I see the Red Wings and I see the Yankees. So where are you?
I'm in Lansing, Michigan. Actually, I'm from the Detroit area though, and this was just my dad's hat, so I.
Oh, okay. Lansing, Michigan, the capital of Michigan.
Yeah, totally. I've never really been to the capital though, so I don't get out that much.
Isn't it amazing when you live somewhere and people from out of town go, "Well, did you go to?" No, I live here, man. I don't go there. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. Yeah. Sometimes I go to Subway.
You go on the subway, that's it. Okay, yeah. Do people get New York? Do they ever go to the Statue of Liberty? No, I should see it right there. I'm not going there. You go down to Ground Zero? No, come on, I live here. Forget about it. But anyway, go ahead. What do you want to talk about?
So I was explaining to my coworker that when you see in the message in the sand that says John loves Mary, that's a message that has to be written in the sand. And DNA is a more complicated message, so that also should have to be made by someone. So I would say, that would be God. And he responded to me by saying, well, a message is only a message if we interpret it that way. So I am interpreting John loves Mary as a message, but I don't interpret DNA as a message. So to me, it's not a message, and I didn't really know how to respond.
Well, no, DNA is in a specific order. See, it's not just complex, it's also specified. You could have a bunch of letters all garbled up and it wouldn't give you a message. Mm-hmm. It would be complex, but it wouldn't be specified. But if you put the letters in a certain order, then it's specified and complex. This is why it's called specified complexity. Mm-hmm. And specified complexity has a target to it or a message to it. There's information in it. Right? When you see John loves Mary in the sand, the crabs didn't make that. The waves didn't make that. You knew there was some human being, some intelligent person that made that. Well, it turns out that DNA is just like that. In fact, it's a one-to-one correspondence. It's digital code. All the letters are in the proper order because those letters do specific things. If you were to take those letters, A, C, T, and G, I think they are, they're names for certain chemicals that make up DNA. They're just letters that designate those nucleotides. If you were to put those in different order, then they wouldn't have the function that is necessary for life, and the organism would get sick and or die. Okay. Yeah. So they're in a particular order, just like John loves Mary is in a particular order.
So like you have to interpret it as a message then?
Well, we don't have to. We just know that if we were to jumble up those letters in DNA, we wouldn't get the same function.
Right.
So it's specified and complex. Just like if you jumble up the letters in John loves Mary, you don't get the same message.
Oh, okay. I see.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, the best person on this, look, I'm standing on his shoulders. I'm not a biologist like Stephen Meyer is, but if you really want to get into this, Stephen Meyer's book, Signature in the Cell, will be very helpful. Or you may want to get his newest book. It's called Return of the God Hypothesis. We had him on the program a couple of months ago. You can watch that or just get the book. But he goes into great detail on that. And that's one of the hardest problems. In addition to the fine tuning we talked about earlier in the show, one of the hardest problems for a non-believer is to explain where the information in DNA came from. Because it's a code, it's a software program. Even Bill Gates admitted that, right? Bill Gates said human DNA is a software program, but far, far more complex than anything we've ever created. Now, if we were to take the Skype software that we're using right now to communicate and went into it and began to randomly jumble up the code, this program would crash.
Yeah.
Right. The code has to be in a very specific order for this whole program to work. Same thing is true with DNA. Same thing is true with human language. So it's a one-to-one correspondence. It's not even an analogy. It's one-to-one correspondence.
Okay, I see. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, excellent, Justin. Thanks for the question, and go see the state capitol. All right.
All right, I will.
And tell Governor Whitmer to get out of there. Come on.
I've been thinking about doing that too.
All right. Tell her to live up to her own mandates.
I should. I really should.
Yeah. Come on. You're a citizen. All right. Thanks so much, Justin.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thanks for calling in. All right.
Frank, I got a few things here. I need rapid fire from you before I bring Destiny in. And I have some super chats here that are juicy. So I'm going to shoot and you go in to answer these questions. We have three really quickly. First, Angela says, during a Zoom call with my boss and coworkers, how can I not look intolerant when they ask opinions?
Wait, I already dealt with that. Why
you did one? Okay. So Nina says, is it fair to call yourself a tolerant person even if you don't tolerate certain viewpoints that most consider extreme, like condoning pedophilia?
Okay, well, when we say, do you consider yourself a tolerant person, we're asking the other person that, because the other person claims to be tolerant of everything, right? The truth is, no, you can't tolerate some things. If you tolerate evil, you're unloving. You're not loving, right? You don't tolerate the Nazis killing the Jews. You don't tolerate murderers in your community. You don't tolerate pedophiles going after children. There are many things we don't tolerate. In fact, the sign of a dying society is tolerating too much. Okay, tolerating evil. We can't tolerate evil. We can tolerate difference of opinion, but we can't tolerate evil. And we don't tolerate everything. And notice everybody out there doesn't tolerate something. The question is, what don't you tolerate? Turns out, it appears to me anyway, that many on the left don't want to tolerate what appears to be sound reason that people have certain rights, including the right to life, including the right to free speech, including the right to freedom of religion. And it seems like those folks on the other side want to take those away. And by what standard? Who knows? Where are they getting this standard that says that you don't have a right to free speech, you don't have a right to your religion, you don't have a right to life? Why are these things good? Where are they getting this from? They don't have a standard. They have to steal a standard from God while they're arguing against him. Hey, a shameless plug for the book, ladies and gentlemen. There it is.
Right in front. There you go.
Stealing from God.
I got another one. Polo Up says, I have someone I care about that says people came first, then religion. Could you give me some insight on some responses or rebuttals to that?
And what do you mean by that? Of course people had to come before religion. How could there be religion without people? I don't see why that's controversial. Yeah. I mean, rocks don't have religion. Monkeys don't have religion.
I assume, Frank, that the idea is that men created religion. I think that's where the thing, is going. Well,
it depends on what you mean by that. You need more detail. What religion did men create? Did man create all religions? You have to evaluate those on a case-by-case basis. You can't make a blanket statement and say they're all false. They're all created. Maybe they are, but you just can't assert that without investigating them.
Okay, last super chat. Brittany asks, how do I deal with an angry atheist who just want to argue instead of have a good discussion? I appreciate everything you do. Thanks.
You don't argue with him. You say, let's just go have pizza. Because he's not interested. If you would have asked the question, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? And he hesitates or says, no, it doesn't matter how much good evidence you give him and how much you dialogue. He's not interested. All you can do is love that person and be in that person's life. Chances are, however, at some point, because it happens to all of us, there's going to be difficulty in that person's life. And when that happens, your phone is going to ring and that person's going to be on the other end. If you've treated that person with love and respect so long, why? They're not going to call their atheist friend when something goes wrong. What's the atheist friend going to say? Well, these things just happen, right? Stuff happens. Oh, well, we're all going to die and become worm food. What does it matter anyway? No, they're going to call you someone with spiritual depth. And when that happens, then you might have an opportunity to really share Christ because maybe their heart is softer. It's softened. But trying to force truth on people that don't want it is like trying to push a rope uphill. It's not going to happen. They're not going to accept it. All right,
Frank, we got Destiny here. She's got two great questions. Destiny, unmute your mic and welcome to the show.
Hey, Destiny.
Hi.
How are you?
Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely. Where are you?
I'm in New York.
New York. All right. The great state. Are you in the city or the state? Where are you?
I'm upstate.
Upstate, which would be?
Right below Albany.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you're significantly upstate because a lot of New Yorkers think upstate is Westchester, like or just north of the Bronx. But you're up near the capital, Albany. Okay. What do you want to talk about?
Well, my first question, I guess, is more important to me personally. But so I've just become born again and both of my parents are unsaved. And I just don't know how to go about helping to witness to them, but also not getting too emotionally involved where I feel hurt when they're not going the way I thought it would go. So any advice with that? Yeah,
join the club because the same thing happened to me. So I think that the most difficult people to witness to are your relatives because they, everyone knows everyone and, well, what's my daughter going to teach me kind of thing, and, oh, this is just a phase she's in, that whole thing. Right. So the slow approach is probably going to be your best approach. I do think asking questions like, hey, Mom, if Christianity were really true, if Jesus really rose from the dead, you follow him, and just see. Because if she says yes, then you can say, well, great. Why don't we study it together? Why don't we see if it's true? You can get a book like I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist and go through it with her. The problem is, most people are not on a truth quest. We're on a happiness quest. And so we're just going to believe whatever we think is going to make us happy. And many people resist Christianity because they think God is going to prevent them from being happy, that God is going to get in the way and stop them from doing something they want to do. So it's not so much about a lack of evidence for God's existence. It's really about our resistance. We don't want God to exist because we want to be God of our own lives. And so I think it's important to ask that question. If Christianity were really true, if Jesus really rose from the dead, would you follow him? And see where they are. Because, look, we all have a history, and maybe we were brought up in bad circumstances. Maybe we were brought up in a bad church, or we just had a bad experience with another Christian, a supposed Christian. And you can understand why people might be resistant. What we have to try and do is separate bad experiences from Jesus, because Jesus is the truth, not what sinful people have done in his name. And so I think we always want to focus on Jesus. Have you had any headway with them at all? Have you gotten anywhere with them, asking them anything, or?
Well, my dad's been coming to a church with me. I got him a, giant font Bible for him.
You got to have a giant Bible that has its own gravitational field. And you just seem more spiritual when you have that. That's good.
Yeah. So they're trying. It's just hard when they backslide, or it's hard to explain things to them when I don't really know everything, obviously.
Well, who does? Join the club, right?
Yeah.
But you mean in terms of behavior when they're backsliding?
Yeah. It's hard to explain certain behaviors that they do. No, you're not supposed to use the Lord's name in vain. No, you're not supposed to be doing this habit. And, it's weird.
Yeah, that's just it, though. It is a habit. It's not something they're probably even consciously thinking about, right?
Right.
They've said it for so long. So it's not, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's not probably even deliberate.
Right. So, and then my next super quick question is, I'm also a nursing student. I'm in my last year. And I'm just wondering, with certain states with tax dollars going to things that are unchristian, how do you go about working in a place that you don't really agree with those values on where you're
that is a matter of conscience, and you're going to have to discover that on your own. Can I really feel good about working here? I can tell you right now that if we were to stop paying taxes because our government gave money to things we didn't agree with, none of us would pay taxes. Of course, Jesus said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Now, you, of course, have a choice as to where you're taxed at the state level and where you live. But I assume you could find almost any budget from any one of the 50 states that would have money going to things that none of us would agree with. And so we really just have to do our duty and work hard to change those things if we can. But we can't say we're not going to pay taxes because money goes to election or something like that. We have to give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but we still have an opportunity to be Caesar and to influence what Caesar does in our nation. So we ought to go about doing that. It's getting harder and harder, as you know, Destiny, to boycott certain things or say, look, I don't want to put my money toward that in any way, because there's virtually no place you can go now that isn't tainted to some degree with anti-Christian beliefs or anti-Christian behavior.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
All right. And thank you for being concerned about your parents, and thanks for calling in, and congratulations on one more year. And you're a nurse. Thank you for doing that too.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Destiny.
Yes. God bless you.
God bless. God bless. Great question. Let's see. I'll pull another question off. You got somebody else out there, Jorge?
Almost ready, man. Go ahead.
Wow. This footballer says, I'm from the UK. I had a cardiac arrest this week. If people can be brought back to life so easily, how does that affect Christian testimonies of a similar kind, miracles? Well, I don't know if it's a miracle you came back, Seb. It may have been a medical event where they brought you back. But Jesus's resurrection was something that took place after 3 days. Well, not full 3 days. The 3 days is an idiom for any parts of 3 days. But Jesus was dead from Friday night all the way to Sunday morning and came back to life. And that was a resurrection, and he also predicted it. So people can be shocked back in. Their heart may stop. They can be shocked back in. and that wouldn't necessarily be a miracle, but somebody who's been dead for, say, at least 36 hours or more, and literally had his heart punctured with a spear where blood and water came out, and the Romans knew how to kill people. They knew he was dead. He was embalmed in bandages and spices, about 75 pounds of it, put in a cold, dark tomb with a 2,000-pound stone in front of it. He was dead, and he did come back to life. By the way, miracles, if they're going to be effective, have to be rare if they're going to get our attention. If the purpose of a miracle is to point to a truth that God is doing something, particularly say he's given us a new insight, he's given us a new revelation, he's confirming a new prophet, they have to be rare. I mean, let's just look at resurrections, for example. If resurrections occurred routinely, what would the resurrection of Christ mean to us? Nothing. I mean, if you go to somebody and you go, Jesus rose from the dead to prove he was God, and the guy goes, so what? Uncle George just rose from the dead 2 weeks ago. Now I got to give the inheritance back. No, it's got to be a rare event if it's going to get our attention. If miracles are occurring all the time, they lose their apologetic value. If other resurrections have occurred since Jesus, they have to be extremely rare. I don't know of any since Jesus. Okay, that's what makes the resurrection of Jesus unique, right? You can't have people popping up from the dead all the time and thinking Jesus is something special. He's special precisely because he did something that nobody else has ever done except himself, raising Lazarus, who was raised to a body that later died. Jesus was raised to an immortal body, a glorified body that we will get one day at the final resurrection. All right, good question. And I'm glad you're okay, Seb. Pray for Seb, because if he had a cardiac arrest.
Amen.
Pray for him.
We got Evan. Right. Evan coming in. Go turn your mic on and welcome to the show, bro.
Hey, Evan, how are you?
I'm melting in California. I'm
in California. Where in California are you?
Fresno.
Oh, well, Fresno's right in the heart of the valley there, man. Yeah, Fresno. What's the temperature?
Oh, it's 104, but it'll be 114 tomorrow, which is not fun.
Man, that's like living on the face of the sun. Jeez.
It is. I was cooking up a burger earlier, and I was like, I know how you feel.
You don't even need the grill, man. You don't need the grill. You can just put it out on the patio. Sidewalk.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
I was thinking.
Now, you guys need water too, don't you? Are you in another drought?
You know, as far as I know, we still are. I'm not sure.
Of course, you're always. It's California.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's
stop using your water. Stop watering your lawn. Stop washing your car. Yeah. Just get a vaccine and shut up. That's what everyone says, right? Okay, good.
Oh, man.
All right. Anyway, go ahead. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I tend to try to have a lot of conversations with other peers in my college here at Fresno State University. I was actually lucky to have you over at our university 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, a couple of years ago. I want to come back, man. So if you want to do it again, let us know.
Yes, and
I love Fresno State.
Yeah. Oh well, not in the summer. Just remember that.
Not in the summer. No, we're going to come in like February. We'll just
that's awesome.
Just email us and we'll be there. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been trying to have conversations with friends, or just people I meet at dorms or just walking around with about God. And I run into this thing. I run into people who say they believe in God, whether it be they're from a Catholic background, they're from a Muslim background, or any type of maybe even polytheistic background. We have a lot of shamanistic people here, so people who may not know exactly what I mean by God, by the Judeo-Christian one God, and they'll say, "Oh no, I know higher power." Yeah. The problem is when I'll be having conversations like this, it turns into, oh, here are my religious activities that kind of affirm my belief, and I want to know how can I use some tactics to conversate about their obedience to Jesus, and do that in a way that doesn't throw up their like defense walls, like, oh, I'm attacking them, or it sounds like I'm trying to like say, hey, are you doing these things right? You know.
But are they claiming to be Christians, did you say, Evan?
Yes, some of them.
They are.
Most of them, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're trying to see why they're doing certain things that are contrary to the scriptures. Basically. That,
and also trying to check in, like, hey, what does it look like to obey Jesus? What does it look like to have obedience? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think an approach you can take would be to ask them what they think it's like. Right? Ask them.
Right.
What do you think it's like to be obedient to Jesus? What does it mean to carry your cross, to deny yourself? What do you think it means? And ask them. I mean, it's easy to ask questions. It's hard to answer them, right? So
absolutely,
maybe ask them. You know, Jesus gave us one new command. You know what the one new command was?
It says, love as I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Love one another as I've loved you. Well, how did he love us? He sacrificed himself for us. Right. So that kind of love, which rejoices in the truth, says Paul, which always protects, says Paul, is the kind of love that will look out for somebody if they're going outside the lines. You see,
right.
God has given us moral boundaries, almost like guardrails on a highway, because he wants us to flourish in the Christian life. He wants us to flourish as human beings. And if we stay inside those guardrails, we can get to where we want to go. Once we start going over the lines or out into the shoulder or through the guardrails or through the woods or something, we're not going to make it to where we're going, right? All freedom requires restraint. And people don't seem to realize that. They think freedom means I get to do whatever I want. No, not in this fallen world. You don't get to do whatever you want. If you did, you'd be dead already. If I did everything I wanted to do, I wouldn't be 59 years old. I'd have been dead. I've been dead a long time ago. You have to have restraint if you want to have freedom. Obviously, it's a couple of examples. Driving is one example. Eating is another, right? You just can't eat anything you want, whenever you want, as much as you want, if you want to have the freedom of good health. Okay? You just can't date anybody you want whenever you want if you want to have a good relationship and a married relationship with one other person. You just can't, run off with other people whenever you get the urge. Okay? So all freedom requires restraint. If you want to be free to have a real, intimate, loving relationship with your wife, you have to forego freedoms in other areas. You have to have restraint. And I think people just need to be informed of that a little bit more. I mean, it's so obvious, but sometimes the obvious we miss, right?
Well, it's college culture too, and so it's not exactly facilitating that truth. So yeah. Well, thank you so much.
I would ask them. I would ask them what they think, and then if there's something specific that you see in their lives, you go, "This is contrary to Jesus." Yeah. You might say, "Hey, I noticed that you believe X. How do you align that with what Jesus says about it, or what?
That's perfect,
how do you align that with what this passage says about it?" See what they say. Yeah,
that's perfect. Yeah, I like that.
All
Thank you. That's really helpful. You wouldn't believe how helpful
Evan.
that is. Well, thank you very much.
I appreciate you calling and email us at crossexamine.org. Go to the website. We'd love to come back out to Fresno State.
I will.
I think last time we were out there, we did University of Pacific, Fresno State, maybe one other school out there.
Maybe Chico.
Maybe I don't know if we were in Chico or maybe we're up in. We did a church in Stockton. I remember that. Maybe we were in Stockton too.
No way. That's cool.
Yeah. Because I got a friend, Don Blythe, in Stockton. He's a great pro-life warrior up there. And we spoke at a church there. And then we did University of Pacific, UP, U of P. They don't like UP. They like U of P. University of Pacific, which nobody knows. Well, very few people know unless you go there. University of Pacific is where they filmed Raiders of the Lost Ark, the classroom scenes. Remember when he's crawling through the window trying to get away from the girls?
No way.
That's U of P. That's right.
Cool. Man.
That's right. But anyway, enough trivia for today. Thanks for calling, Evan.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Hope to see you at Fresno State sometime. Who else we got, Jorge?
Frank, I got a quick start. Stephanie Leah asked, how can I get into apologetics? I have been studying your book and various others. I would love to get into this ministry. Any advice would be so appreciated, and this would have been a perfect question for a month ago. But go ahead on
CIA,
and knock
the
it off.
Cross-Examine Instructor Academy, but we're full now. You can apply, and you'll be on the waiting list, Stephanie.
Put on the waiting list,
you might get in. It's August 12th to 14th at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills out there in California. But you can also take courses here at crossexamine.org. Click on online courses, and there'll be a ton of courses up there. If you want to get a degree in this, then I'd recommend you go to ses.edu, ses.edu. That stands for Southern Evangelical Seminary. And of course, everything's online now. You don't even need to move. When I had to come to seminary almost 30 years ago, we had to pick up the whole family from Maryland and move them down here to Charlotte. Now you don't have to do that. You can do everything via Zoom. So try those three things out. CIA, courses at crossexamine.org, and ses.edu. That'll be helpful.
Tell them about SCS, what they do when they sign up and they get, I think it's 10% off.
Yeah, I think if they go to ses.edu/Frank, is that right? They get 10% off?
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think so.
Something like that. Yeah. If not, if you can't find that link, just call them up and say, hey, Frank told me to come here. There you go.
That's right. That'll work. Okay, so we got our next guest, Justin. I'm about to bring him in. All he needs to do is get his camera going, and then we will have him on the show. So we got Justin almost set up. So there's no need to go anywhere. And here we go. Justin, welcome to the show, bro. Go ahead on and, you're just unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hey, it's actually Josh, but that's okay.
Hey, Josh.
I say Josh. I say Josh. Well, it's my accent, man. Come on. Give me some grace, bro.
I'm blaming you.
Okay.
It's Yeshua, like Jesus. Same thing. There you go. Here he is. Jesus on the program. Go ahead, Josh.
I'm quite as good as an example as him, though. Don't follow me.
Where are you, by the way?
I'm in Portland.
Which Portland, Maine or Oregon?
Oregon.
Uh-oh. Are you the only Christian out there besides the Bible Project guys, or what?
I am. It's Sodom and Gomorrah over here, man.
Okay. Well, thanks for being a beacon in a dark place. What do you want to talk about?
Absolutely. I'll actually see you at CIA this summer, so I'm looking forward to that.
Good. By the way, do you know that is Peter Boghossian running for mayor out there?
I'm actually not sure. I'd have to look into that.
Peter Boghossian is the guy that wrote the book Manual for Creating Atheists. You know, he's an atheist, and he's a professor at Portland State. And yet now he's doing tours with Corey Miller of Ratio Christi, a Christian guy, because he realizes that the left is so crazy, they're going to take away his free speech rights. So now he's aligning with Christians, and he said, look, I might even run for mayor.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So he was out there in Portland. He was saying that. I don't know if I saw him on a YouTube video talking about that, but check out the mayor race and see if he's in it.
I definitely will. Yeah. Thanks for telling me about that.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, here's my question for you. So this is actually I've been struggling with this because I work in the schools over here in Portland. Ooh, and, you know, this whole conversation on preferred pronouns, there are several, and excuse me, I encounter them regularly in my job. And in fact, I'm working very closely with one right now who I don't believe is gender dysphoric, but has the preferred pronouns of they, them. Mm-hmm. And so here's my question to you is there an argument to be made about using someone's preferred pronouns and hope that you can one day witness to them after developing a relationship? And I'm willing to lose my job on this. I am, but it's one of those things where I'm just not really sure what to do, because it's like, well, do I say them? Do I kind of avoid as much as I can? And just one last thing I'll say, Frank, and then I'll let you respond, is I heard, and the reason I'm kind of coming from this point of view is I heard an apologist say, he used Proverbs, and he said that, you know, I might actually use someone's preferred pronouns in order to witness to them one day, like answer a fool according to their folly, right? So use that, and then his reasoning was, by using that, I can then lead into a relationship and real sharing of my view one day. So anyway, that's my question to you.
Josh, which is this? Are you in like K through 12 education, or where are you?
Yeah, I'm in K through 12. I work primarily with middle and high schoolers. Okay,
and are the kids bringing this up, or is this a colleague?
Oh, it's well, I work directly with the kid, but the colleagues are, you know, at least from what I can tell, all in on this.
Okay. Yeah, you know, this could be, again, a matter of conscience. I just don't think lying to people is something we ought to do if we can avoid it. And I think you can avoid it. First of all, pronouns are used in the absence of somebody. Like if you're referring to somebody, they're not there, right? So you wouldn't, if the person's sitting in front of you, wouldn't go they, you'd say John. Right. Yeah. So you can certainly avoid using the pronoun if you want to. And secondly, it's in addition to helping the other person, you don't want to pollute yourself. Right. You don't want to, in my view anyway, tell people a lie to make them feel good that sends them further down a road that is a very dark road. I don't know if you heard the top of the show. Did you hear the top of the show when we started talking about the questions we ought to ask other people about this?
Yes.
Okay. So I think some of those questions need to be asked to the people who are making these policies and say, do you think the school system or the Board of Education, whoever it is, should violate the conscience of their teachers or wherever you work? Should it do that? Do people who work here in this school system have to all agree on every controversial moral, political, social, and religious issue? If they say yes, you've got a lawsuit on your hands. They're going to have to say no. Okay. So I think a lot of these policies survive because nobody pushes back, because they don't know how to push back and they're afraid to push back. But I think we need to start pushing back. I don't know if you saw the situation in Virginia a couple of weeks ago where they tried to fire some coach or something who wouldn't use the preferred pronouns. He was a Christian. He said, I can't do it. People are made in the image of God. I'm not going to lie to them. And I don't know if it was the Supreme Court or some other court said, you can't fire this guy. He has a right to that view. And they reinstated him. So now we can't always trust the courts, quite obviously, but we just do what's right and we leave the results to God. I just don't know if calling somebody by their preferred pronoun is going to open up an avenue to the gospel with this person. It might be better to say to them privately, look, I care about you so much that I will not tell you something that I think is false. I won't do it for your own good and for my own conscience. I'm not going to lie to you. And I hope you would do the same for me. If you thought I was going down the wrong road, I hope you'd respect me enough to tell me that and love me enough to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally hear you. So I guess in this instance and where it gets complicated, because I totally agree, by the way, and it's not something I would even want to do, but I heard that perspective. And feel free to cut me off whenever you need. But
oh, you're all right.
I have to use like that. It's kind of assumed that I will do this in the position I am, which is, working very closely with these students. And when I'm in meetings with a bunch of other staff, it's kind of like if I were to break that out in the meeting, everything you just said, that might not be the right time and place, but maybe what I'm hearing is this is where I sit down with admin and have that conversation or with the student.
Yeah, exactly. You sit down with the people responsible for the policy, and then you don't put the policy on them. You say, does the board or whoever comes to this conclusion, the policymakers, do they think that it's right to do X, Y, and Z? In fact, the question I brought up before is this: why does the Board of Education or whoever's making this policy think it has the medical expertise to order employees to encourage people to stay in their state of gender dysphoria? Why do you think that's a good thing? And is the board aware that those with gender dysphoria have a suicide rate 19 times higher than the general public, even after the surgery? So how does affirming this condition help people? Do they also know that nearly 90% of kids that have this condition or say they have this condition grow out of it by the time they're 18? They stay with the gender that they're born with, with their biological sex. So you can bring all these things up. And I think it would be an appropriate place to do it. And maybe you put it in writing and you say, look, here's my reasons. Out of my concern for the kids, not just my own conscience, but for the kids, I don't think we ought to go through with this particular policy because it has unintended and unforeseen consequences. And actually, they may be unforeseen by the people making the policy, but they're not actually unforeseen if you look at the data. If you look at the data, the suicide rate is 19 times higher than the general public for those that even have surgery. So I don't understand why people think it's wise to affirm them in this direction.
Absolutely. It's much more loving to tell the truth.
Exactly.
Is this, I just want to ask, is this going to be on your YouTube channel later so I can review all your great answers?
Oh yeah. This is this whole thing. As soon as we shut down here in a few minutes, YouTube will automatically load it, as will Facebook, and it'll be on our YouTube channel, Facebook pages. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you can watch it on our app too. It's a couple of days, it stays there, and then it goes down. Then we put it directly back onto the app as a archive.
Okay.
Yeah, we could put some of these questions maybe in the in the description too.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for your work in the school. We need Christians in the public school system. So thanks for what you're doing.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
All right. You too. God bless.
God bless.
All right. How are we, Ernesto?
All right, done? Frank, that's it, man. That's it for today.
That is it, man.
It's 9 p.m. We ran through a bunch. Man, I'm telling you, man.
These are all Jorge sound effects that he's given me control over. So I can do stuff like this. You know.
Now, every time he sees my beard glistening, that's what.
That's how he feels. That's what I do right there.
Absolutely.
Actually, that beard's kind of scary.
Oh man, come on! Don't be like that. Well, we're having too much fun here.
The audience, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody wants. Yeah, they want serious stuff. But anyways, man, it's been fantastic. I want to let everybody know that if you didn't apply for the CIA this year in time, you can still do it. But we put you on the waiting list. Also, everybody who wants to go deeper, like our supporter there, Leah, on the not the super chat, but the stars on Facebook. Yeah. SES best place to go. And if you go to I think it's ses.edu/Frank, you'll see the whole 9 yards, and you can actually download an ebook also for free to know if that is the right place for you. I will say it is because it's the best, but that's something else. But before we go, Frank, let's go ahead and tell everybody where our hope lies.
Yes, our hope lies in Jesus. Look, friends, if God exists and Jesus rose from the dead, Christianity is true, which means that our future is secure and our identity right now is secure. You don't achieve your identity, you receive your identity in Christianity. It takes all the pressure off you. You just trust in Christ and you have become a child of God, according to the eyewitness John, wrote his biography we call the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 12. He's giving you the right to become a child of God. You don't have to struggle with your identity. Your identity is in Christ. It's done. All you need to do is accept it. So that's where our hope is. Thanks for being with us tonight. Hope to see you next week for another live Hope One. See ya.